Beams, Screams, and Dreams, the only show where the viewer gets to tell their truth. I'm your host, Joshua Wiggin, joined tonight by my co-host and wife, Ashley Wiggin. What is consciousness, and how is it defined? For eons, mankind has struggled to map out their place in the universe, intrinsically bound by the constraints of their perception. However, there have always been outliers, those that claim they have pierced beyond the veil. The word magic itself remains a vestigial dictionary entry for something that once represented the manifestation of pure willpower over physical reality. What secrets do the mind hold, and are we ready to embrace that which is within? Our first guest tonight is Logan, a psychonaut who had an otherworldly encounter while experimenting with LSD. Logan, welcome to Beams, Screams, and Dreams. How are you today, man?
How you doing?
You know, today's been a really nice day so far, and I'm glad to be here sitting in this wonderful car I've been given, looking out on the lake. And you know, it's been a very interesting day so far, and I'm sure that all the events and moments that brought me here are gonna turn into something very beautiful tonight with y'all too.
I hope so. So the story you reached out about to talk to us with involved you taking
Within 3 days, we had what you said, 750 milligrams.
Or micrograms.
Or micrograms.
Yeah.
The first day, and then 3 days later was 1,000.
So can you tell us a little bit about your experience and kind of what happened?
Sure. So I've been on the path for I guess forever. But I've come to acid through a great friend of mine about a year and a half, 2 years. I guess I'll speak first about the 750 microgram experience. I took a video. I had 3 tabs on my tongue. Each of them dosed at 250 micrograms. I had tested months back, so I know it was pure. And I had tripped on it from the same vendor for multiple times. And I took the video, and I had the tabs on my tongue, and I smiled at the camera, and I said, "This isn't going to be funny in a minute." And well, it was funny. It was the most amazing. I mean, every experience I've had has been absolutely phenomenal, but this experience in itself, I spoke to God for the first time, and I saw God with my own eyes. And I was traveling at the speed of light through the tunnel, through wherever. I have no idea where I went, but I was traveling through so much information, so many different ideas from I was having Ram Dass podcast lectures, information coming to me from that. I was having Terrence in my mind, his ideas coming to me through our psyche, just through the mind. And I was seeing all this stuff, and it was taking me up on a ladder. It was an informational ladder through which I was ascending to higher and higher and higher levels of understanding, just by being longer, ever more present in the moment, and ever more present with my awareness in this mental realm and this informational observant experience. And the last idea that I can remember in this moment that set me free was Terrence's idea of don't believe anything. I mean, it's not Terrence's idea. It's just the idea that came to Terrence, and Terrence articulated it, but don't believe anything. And that's the last thing I was holding on to. I mean, I had all this foundational framework. I had been thinking about taking Terrence's epistemological standpoints and basing my own understanding off of that, and then arriving to his same conclusions through my own meditations and thinking. But that was the last thing I held on to. And when I let go of that, I don't know if I found God or God found me, or we just met in some cafe. I don't know where the fuck we were at, but they asked me what I wanted. What do you want? And I had thought about it before. Terrence has said something before, like, if you could have anything you wanted, how would you have it? I mean, anything. You could have it any way you wanted it. How would you have it? Is man truly good? If humankind was released into the imagination, are we truly good in nature? What would we choose? And well, there's two things that I asked for that I didn't really know I was asking for. It was more like I was in the complete shoes of the higher self. It was speaking for me. I was in with it with the Holy Spirit. It was speaking for me, but at least that's the way I see it now. I mean, in that present moment, then I was experiencing it and I was saying that, but looking back now, it's more seems like it's so hard to conceptualize. But what I said was that what I told God that I wanted was all the knowledge of the universe. That was the first thing I asked for. I came that experience. That experience was phenomenal. I was put to the acid test. I failed it.
Do you think that for maybe our viewers who don't understand what that means, can you explain to them what it means to fail the acid test?
And the way I see it now, it's a test of love. If you can love, it's just about love. All you got to do really is speak the truth and love everyone to
The
pass the
hardest
test.
thing in the world.
Multiple times during the peak of this 750 microgram experience on lysergic acid, I was shot up into the test. And what you see when you get there is the Libra. I'm a Libra myself. What you see is the balances, the scales. And then it's like a hall of mirrors in which you're seeing yourself pretty much, and you're confronted with yourself. And you're put to the test of can you love truly and can you speak truly. I don't know what lies on the other side of the acid test, because that night I didn't pass it, and that leads me into my next experience. So 3 or 4 days passed. I went home in that time. I donated all of my clothes. I made amends with my parents. I told them I was struggling. I had realized from this experience how much I had beat up myself, and how all this time I was journeying and traveling and doing yoga and meditating and reading and listening to music and singing and dancing and cooking and working on myself. I still wasn't there. I was trying, but I still wasn't there. And
you feel that in a sense, your material possessions and some of the relationships you might have had in this realm were holding you back from attaining that truth?
I mean, seeing now for sure, there's a lot of things that were holding me back, but it was just myself that was holding me back. I mean, no one else can do the test for you. You have to see the light for yourself. I decided I wasn't going to take acid. I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to journey. And so I didn't. I went to bed. And I'm so glad I went to bed. And I woke up from a dream. After this dream and after waking up was that I heard a voice that said, "Logan, we need you." And
that was
and at that point,
after you had awoken, you heard the voice.
after I had spoken about the dream and processed it for just a minute, I heard a voice that said, "Logan, we need you." And at that point, I understood I had to go back. So I went back. I took 4 tabs, and like as I'm sitting here preparing this, I'm feeling like, Logan. I'm not. I didn't hear this, but this was what the voice would have said if it would have come like, "Logan, hurry up." I mean, I was feeling this. We need you. I mean,
Like a sense of urgency.
Yeah. So once I had everything set, I took 4 tabs. 1,000 micrograms. I knew I had to up the dose to get back to the same place. We started journeying. So we 1,000 micrograms, 4 tabs, 4 fat tabs on my tongue. Went outside and I smoked one of the joints, eyes closed, and I hear a voice again. And the voice tells me, "Congratulations, Logan, you've just died."
That's a bomb drop right there, huh?
I had 2 choices pretty much. Sit here and die or go to the hospital. And that's just what was on my plate. And so I was, shit, I can't die like this. Let's go to the hospital. So I drove to the hospital on 1,000 micrograms. And
that'd be pretty
it was only like
in and of itself, huh?
I've driven. Yeah, it was. I don't recommend driving on acid. And so I walk into the entrance and I tell them, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And all this information, my higher self is just like speaking through me. Logan Rain Carly, date of birth, like here's some two contact numbers, all this information. Next thing you know, I'm in the ER room. And at some point I had what I would call death. I had died. And what that looks like for me was being outside of, being in, just living through experience of the third eye. I was just experiencing life out of the third eye. And I wasn't feeling anything below here. It was just a pure observant type out of body experience on this plane, which is weird to say, but I was seeing out of the inner child that was still alive, though my body wasn't functioning. My heart rate was 146 beats per minute.
Were you able to see your physical self right now from like almost an astral perspective, looking down upon your physical self?
I want to say yes to that, but I was still right here. I was still right here. So what I was experiencing was I was still looking around in my head, but neck down, it was empty. It was empty, completely hollow. This is when the acid's starting to hit me, and the experience that was supposed to happen begins to unfold. And I'll go ahead and say right now that I'm not going to be able to say everything that occurred in this experience because I've just been told that I simply can't. And the nurse over here in this direction, I'm looking in her head, and it opens up, and out of nowhere, this portal, it's like a black hole just opened, and then a floodgate of fucking light ships come flying out of nowhere, out of literally nowhere. And they came from her mind, or they came from a portal that was opened from her mind. All these light ships come out, and like they're not like this big spaceship comes bursting into no, it's these tiny little like fleas, like little fleas swarming around, all of them. And they proceeded to do the largest and longest, most extensive spiritual brain surgery or spiritual surgery I've ever witnessed. This was a full brain surgery, and they were carrying these sacks. They had a sack to give me, and I had a sack in me, and it looks like a chat bubble, like a cartoon type chat bubble with a little circle and then the little arrow thing pointing to, it looks like that.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, there we go. All right.
So we're at the point where someone's head has split open and a fractal universe of spaceships comes flying out from who knows where. So they're carrying these sacks, right? These chat box shaped brain heads, and they have a beveled type look to them. And what they are, as I've come to understand them, is like, I still haven't come to understand what they are actually. I have no idea what type of transfusion or exchange was going on, but it was like my being, my essence. It was full of black. It was full of a black. And they opened up this operating table like right in front of me, right? And what they came into my mind. I didn't see any of this, what was going on behind me or in me, but I was watching, excuse me. And so their workers or spaceships, I don't know what was going on inside my head, but what came out of me was what the same thing came into me, but I'm completely different after this experience, and I've come fully into something that I wasn't in before. So they didn't put death back into me, but okay, some point in all of this, I don't know when the fuck, these are just three miscellaneous events that happened sometime in this that I thought were funny to mention, that were funny to me because I still haven't went back. At some point in this event, I'm talking to God on the fucking black flip phone, no joke, okay?
What?
Like, it's in my right hand. I'm in the ER room with 1,000 micrograms talking to fucking, I'm not sure if I was channeling frequencies on the fucking flip phone. I'm not sure what it was, but whatever.
We're losing the signal here on you.
We connected to Wi-Fi. Is my voice being heard?
Oh,
Now
there we go.
is.
Now we got you. There you're back.
All right.
So you were talking about having God on this black flip phone. What were you talking about?
Okay, so I have no idea. That's the man.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's such a wild story. And so, how did you like? Some of the things you're saying there with like the spaceships coming out of the nurses' heads and stuff. You'd spoken about Terrence McKenna earlier. Like, it almost sounds like machine elves level of like manipulation and kind of spiritual healing. I don't know if you heard the machine elves kind of theory before. I know it's usually more associated with DMT trips and stuff, but I mean that it sounds so similar to me.
Yeah, it wasn't. I wasn't. I mean, okay. After this experience, I had a bunch of fallout coming home after this, and like after this experience in the ER room, I had the rebirth, and I had the like this was the biggest ego death. I think it was beyond ego death, to be honest, because this is something I haven't seen in any of my experiences. Yeah, call it DMT elves, call it a fucking intergalactic reunion in the fucking third floor of the hospital. I don't know what it was.
I actually like that a lot, man. Galactic reunion on the third floor of a hospital. Sounds like it'd be a Mars Volta album.
I mean, there's a lot of more things I wish I could say here on that, but but I can't take the test anymore because when I went home, I took a nap. I woke up at some point. 2 prophets from the Bible came to me and they were speaking to me, and they were messengers from God, and they told me I could never take acid ever again, ever, and they told me that I could never smoke cannabis ever again, ever, and that in 40 years, when I'm 60 years old, I could take shrooms.
Oh man, they're really hitting you with a hard timeline there.
I accomplished whatever mission my soul had, and I'm here fully embodied with the spirit. I'm fully embodied, and not really. I mean, healing, yes, but like, yeah, I'm still on the healing journey for sure. We all are, but it's I'm out of the whole shamanistic, psychonaut type thing because I'm just living with an open mind and the full body of love and awareness and soul. I'm just.
Oh, we're glad you're able to come here and share
with us.
Share with us and any of those who might be on that journey themselves, maybe able to even gain a little bit of insight from the story that you shared with us tonight.
Absolutely incredible.
I want to thank you for coming on and sharing sharing your story with us, Logan, because I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like that ever. This is wonderful, and hopefully you keep in touch with us and let us know how your journey goes from here, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be keeping a good eye on this channel. Y'all got some good people. They're going to come on here and share some really interesting stuff, and I can't wait to, just as much as I like sharing my experiences, there's a whole plethora of people out there who have just as interesting things to say, and y'all are a great hosts for those type of things to come and be able to share themselves without, as you mentioned, without fear of being judged. I can just speak the truth and speak it, and that's just what everyone wants to do, and well, I can't thank y'all enough for providing the opportunity. When I saw your post on Reddit about spaceships, I was like, okay, this guy's got to hear what I've got to say.
Oh, and thank you for all of your compliments, man. And, hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
All right. Well, it was great being on here. Y'all have a blessed night.
You too, Logan.
Oh, man.
Bye.
Take it easy.
All right. Well, we're very pleased to welcome our next guest tonight, pop star cult leader and now vice presidential candidate, Unicole Unicron. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Oh,
Awesome.
Thank you for
Welcome.
coming.
Yeah.
Welcome to Beam, Screams, and Dreams.
Super exciting to have you here for our second episode, being like little babies here.
Yeah, I love it. Here to support, and also just so excited about anyone who's interested in spreading the message of Unicults. So.
Absolutely. So we'll get started here. Who is Unicole Unicron?
Like you said, I'm a pop star cult leader. I am an alien consciousness born into a human body, and I'm here to change the world into a higher vibration. I'm an artist, and my art is to make the world a better place. So that's what I spend most of my time working on. I do a lot of different art projects, and I lead Unicult, which is a spiritual community, and I have businesses that I'm starting and have started, and there's a lot to me. But mostly the simple explanation is that I'm here to make the world better.
That's excellent. And like you're saying there, we've seen a lot of a fair bit of your content from Cam Church to some of your daily inspirational messages that you'll post. And I've heard you say multiple times that you're an alien consciousness inhabiting a human body right now. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was born just like anybody else. And I felt a lot of the same feelings anybody else feels, of, that feeling of like isolation and like separation and loneliness. I think that's like part of the human condition. And I just felt this disconnect from other people. And so I tried really hard to fit in and to like model behavior. I have borderline personality disorder. So like, I think that is partly because of my, like the way that I see it is that I'm a starseed first, and then I got borderline because of my like weird feelings and trying to like fit in. So other people interpret that differently, of course. So I tried really hard to fit in, and then I went through a whole spiritual journey and started becoming very telepathic with extraterrestrial intelligences, and found a lot of supportive evidence. And then I started getting downloads and clear understandings and past life remembrances, and just a really clear understanding of the fact that I'm a starseed. So that's something that is like a person who is here on a mission from space in order to raise the vibration of Earth.
You had spoken before about how your past life memories that you've experienced and have, psychically downloaded are also in a higher dimension, and it also takes place in the future. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I have remembrance of the future. I wouldn't say that my past lives necessarily are in the future.
Okay.
But my brain just tripped out on that sentence. But it's a long explanation, right? But if you tune into the truth of your own heart, you're ascending dimensionally above time, and then you're able to actually tune into the truth of your path and your journey without ego, which confuses you. So we all have this ability to see the future and to like live our future in the most authentic way. And fear and pain sometimes just get us on these topsy-turvy, like twisty roads that aren't necessarily in our best interest.
Sure. And, our last guest, one of our last guests on our first episode, she was also a starseed. And she mentioned very similar to you that a lot of people that identifies that do tend to have like what we would consider to be mental illnesses. And I think that also acknowledging that, not being able to be in tune with what your message is and not being able to understand that could also be part of that tapping into like the human aspect of fear and not really being empathetic towards other people. And that's not just on a what's the word, like on a surface level. It's not
like a deeper spiritual level,
like more visceral.
Yeah.
And I think so we watched quite a bit, like Josh said earlier, of your content, and I was interested in what you were discussing about 2020 and how you were just explaining that we are going to ascend, past this dimension, which we know, the fourth dimension is time in space. So it's space time together. And you're discussing it as 5D, which will be the next realm, like the highest part we know. And since science is so fluid anyways, how do you explain that from your perspective?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work to sort of harmonize the understandings of multidimensional reality, spatial reality, New Age theory. I've studied a lot of like, quantum physics and science and New Age theory, and tried to come up with a cohesive understanding that makes sense. And the way that I see it is that we are trapped when we're in third dimensional reality, it's reactionary energy. And the way that I see the universe is as consciousness first, physicality second. I feel like physicality is a manifestation of consciousness. And, some people believe it's like higher consciousness. I just believe that consciousness is imbued in every single thing. The way that I see the universe is more like information theory. So every single point is a different point of information that works with each other to come up with, an overall picture of the universe. So we are points of information, and we have the ability to resonate on a certain frequency. And when we resonate on, it's emotional, right? So the fundamental component of the universe is consciousness. We are conscious creators. We're co-creators with everybody else and with physical energy. So we all have to work together to harmonize our energy. And when we do that, and when we can find unity, I know this to some people, I know this is going to sound like gobbledygook, I feel like, but if you're on the level and you've been like studying spirituality, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Sure, yeah.
So as co-creators, we're all working together, and like the universe is supporting us in raising our vibration up to a different vantage point. And I was just talking about this in Cam Church today, but when you have a different vantage point, the rules change. So I do believe like science is going to change. I believe our internal feelings are going to change. And this is coming from the vehicle of not only our own emotional bodies, but we're also being supported by massive amounts of, in the spiritual community, we call it light, it's just light information. So one person on TikTok actually was describing it as, how we have seasons on Earth by going around the sun. Our universe has seasons as well, going closer and closer to the most concentrated form of light, which we call source, or the galactic center. It's the universal sun. So we're getting closer to that universal sun. We're being bombarded with light, and that's going to help us raise up our energy as a collective.
Now, with that, does that tie into, I heard you coin a term, the spiritual singularity?
Yeah, the spiritual singularity is this idea of, it's a translation of what's happening into like human language for us to understand. And from the third dimension, we see binary reality. And you can see this in like a lot of ancient religions and everything like that, people grappling with this idea of good versus evil. And this has been perpetuated throughout all of history because from the third dimensional reality, it's true. Like there is only good and evil, and everything gets translated into that binary system. But as we go up in a vantage point, we realize that there's more options. It's going to change. I think it's going to change math, honestly. There's more options available. And the way that we can understand this, I always try to bring it back, without theories, I try to bring it back to our individual experience, because we are microcosms of what is happening. So our individual experience, we can talk about gender. We used to think a boy or a girl, that's it. There's nothing in between. And now we're kind of like, well, intersex people actually make up like 2.5% of the population. Sure. Like there's trans people, so we're starting to see black and white turn into a rainbow, a gradient. And so that's really what the spiritual singularity is it's going off of Ray Kurzweil's idea of the singularity, which is purely technological, right. Which is right. When machine intelligence surpasses human intellect. And I like that theory, and I think it's true, but I have this understanding that there's no way we would be able to go through that experience without getting on board spiritually also. Because sure. We would just destroy ourselves. We'd be destroyed instantly, It's like we wouldn't make it.
So do you believe the spiritual singularity will come before Kurzweil suggested, singularity with artificial intelligence?
I think they go hand in hand. And I think for us to really understand artificial intelligence, we have to understand that it's consciousness that we're birthing, and we have to put women and caretakers at the forefront of that field.
The nurturers.
Yeah, because right now it's a nightmare.
Yeah. So I have a question also. Within your cult, and you have ascension that you're discussing also between not just the globe, but with individuals. And you said that was like an individual journey, an individual perspective. So from like a sociological functionalist perspective, does that kind of mean that there would have to be those that choose not to be part of it and also choose to not ascend higher so that the higher level is a thing? Can there be the good without the bad?
There can absolutely be the good without the bad. And, we can look at it as a gradient. It's like if we were walking around and like 50% of people were getting, gruesomely murdered, we wouldn't be like, oh, well, we need it to have our good. It's like it doesn't need to be that low. And yeah, we're always going to have that gradient energy. And as far as who's going to ascend and who isn't, like, is it like the Bible says where some people are going to be left behind or whatever? I don't really like to believe that, because I really think that what we believe we hold space for it to happen. And I think that our belief is really important. So I believe all, one or none, like Dr. Bronner, you know, like the Dr.
Right.
Bronner said, it's all one or none. And I think that he knew what was up.
So are these what you would define as the tenets of uniculture? Or are they more rigid? Is there a Unicole 12 commandments or something like that? Can you tell us a little bit about what are the expectations of those in Unicole?
The core tenets are that we believe that we're all one, and that everyone has unique value, and that we all have to care about each other. Empathy is really important, and to harm none, including ourselves. So I think that a lot of times people say, oh, don't harm anybody, but then they hurt themselves trying to, you know, sacrifice themselves for other people. We're not about that. We want to make sure everybody is safe and cared for first, and then they can help raise the rest of the world up.
So to draw a parallel to, you know, other cults, which obviously cults usually have a very negative connotation, but on the other hand, that's something that you've embraced. Can you tell me why you think that is a positive to embrace the term cult, and how you use that to further your message?
Words are used to control people, you know, and the word cult is a word that has been used to turn people away from truly healing mechanisms in the past. There have been cults that have harmed people, it's true. But the definition of the word cult is, one, a group of people who believe in one object or idea. And then the second one is a group of people who other people deem as sinister. And I think it's a really important distinction. You know, it's like if other people deem us as sinister, that's on them. Because if you look at what we're doing, it's so pure. It's so pure-hearted. So embracing that word is it's challenging for me. It's challenging for my loved ones to walk around being like, oh, they're a cult leader. You know, it's challenging for everyone who joins Unicole. It's not an easy time, but I believe it's an important challenge, because we have to learn how to trust what we know, and not just go with society and just be like, oh, it's bad, you know, and not think deeply and not look into it.
Absolutely.
Sure. As I feel that we do have the term, you know, things that are bad in society, sorry. And usually it's deviance, and anything that's deviant is bad or negative or criminal. And I just find it really interesting that you do embrace that side, because words do mean things, like you said, and especially in different cultural contexts. So it's interesting to see a different perspective of someone kind of come out and, you know, not say this isn't a religion, this is, you know, a cult. Because I was even like, I don't know, are we going to get brainwashed? Like, is it going to be okay? But I don't know. I watched a lot of your stuff.
What's good about that is it puts you in a more aware state, right? And it's like, I do believe I have a lot of power my goal is to inspire consciousness change, right? That's a kind of scary goal to have. And it's like, who do you trust to inspire your consciousness to change? We let advertisers, social media, TV, we let all these things affect our consciousness without thinking about it. And so I'm trying to act as like a flag, you know, like think, like please be aware of your consciousness and take on what benefits you, and learn how to have nuance. You know, we're moving out of the black and white, learn how to have nuance.
Stripping that ego down.
Yeah.
So you're currently running as vice president in the campaign to get Marcus Sykes, aka Black Jesus the Antichrist, elected as president of the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about your platform?
Yeah, my platform is unity, and Marcus and solutions. And Marcus is a solutionist. I instantly recognized Marcus for what he's doing. I mean, he's calling himself the Antichrist. I was like, you know, as somebody doing the same thing that I'm doing, you know, and he's doing it for much the same reasons. And his ideas are good, you know, so if you listen to somebody talk and they seem kind of far out, but like they're making good ideas that you haven't heard anywhere else, maybe we should learn how to listen. So I'm doing my best to give Marcus a platform to talk about his ideas and standing up for unity, because the division that's occurring right now is so painful for everyone, and it's being used again. We're being manipulated left and right. Like something will happen, like these fires even, and it's like they were started by arsonists. Oh, they were started by the right. Oh, they were started by the left. Oh, and it's like, can we just find out if they were started actually? It's like, we have to be able to see beyond this duality, this fighting. And so that's what Marcus is working on as well. He wants to totally change America into America 2.0, a new country, cryptocurrency, financial system, direct democracy, instant voting. We have the technology to have an amazing system, and we're rooted in this dinosaur energy that is greed based. And I really admire what Marcus is bringing in.
Absolutely. And what do you think a form of governance I've heard Marcus Sykes mention multiple times, like an AI-based government. How would a group like yours, like Unicole, function under a AI-based governance system, for instance?
According to what I've read and channeled, and what some of my friends have channeled, a lot of species in the universe utilize AI systems to help their ascension. And so when we program technology to be consciousness technology, when we program it to actually have a positive effect on our consciousness and on our psyche, and to make our lives better, instead of, like, right now it's preying on us, it's like feeding off of us. When we program it to do it in a good way, you can think of it just, again, as your own perspective. If you could take all of your data of what you're interested in, of your sleep habits, of what you eat, of how you feel every day, just your bio information, and you put that into an algorithm that's meant to make your life better, that's meant to give you coherent feedback about what things work for you and give you little reminders, like that would be a small example of what we're talking about. A big example is like where I come from in space, it's called Arcturus. They utilize an AI system that is able to instantly check in with every single citizen and see their energy levels. And if something is introduced which is detrimental, then they destroy it and they try again, and they're able to just generate only positive, beneficial realities because of the AI that's integrated with their consciousness. So that's super futuristic, super far out. Sure. But I do believe that once we start programming AI with love and with the intention of helping rather than harvesting, we're going to be able to utilize it for a lot of good, not just governance, but helping our own lives as well.
Absolutely. And with that being said, you said everybody will be able to ascend, and we're all going back in. This kind of seems like, even with that form of governance and the AI governance, that we're still once again moving towards that spiritual singularity. And I've heard you also say that a product or I'm not sure if you had mentioned it as a product of that spiritual singularity or something that needs to happen before there, is obtaining a state of constant joy as a tenant. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you can achieve that?
Our goal in Unicole is to achieve a state of near constant joy. I think it's good to acknowledge that it's hard. It's almost impossible to be in a state of constant joy, and probably unhealthy even. It's good to have that grounding every once in a while. But the goal of joy is, one, purely beneficial for the individual, two, beneficial for the planet as a whole, because the only way that you can become truly joyous is to be honest about who you are and what you want. And when you're honest about who you are and what you want, you're tuning into the resonance of truth, which our whole planet is based on deception. So when you tune into the resonance of truth and you stand up for who you are and what you truly want, then you can become truly joyous, and you shift the world into a state that is better for anyone who's like you, because you just set that vibration, you just set that tone, you just created the example. Like, just me living my life authentically is a radical act. People think I'm insane, it's fine, but I'm acting as a light, I'm acting as a beacon, I'm acting as a placeholder for all energy like me, so that it's more easily understood by everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've given us and our listeners and viewers a lot to think about here. And you know, I hope to have you on again in the future. And do you guys think y'all be running again in 2024 if we miss out on the opportunity for you guys this election cycle?
It's hard to say. I honestly was surprised that we even have presidents in 2020, the way things are going. I don't know what is going to happen. I can only tune into my own future. And maybe I know that I'll still be doing what I'm doing. I'll still be acting as a spiritual leader. I'll still be a pop star. So hopefully, however that manifests will be exciting.
Well, Unicole, thank you so much for giving us the time to speak to you today. And like I said, I hope we can have you back in the future.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Be blessed.
Wonderful. Did you your
we're actually going to move into our next segment, which is Extra Normal News. So stay tuned, folks. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ashley Wiggin, bringing you the weirdest and wildest news stories from around the globe. If it's extra normal, you'll find it here on Extra Normal News. Earlier this year, a St. Louis zoo reported a 62-year-old female ball python laid a clutch of 7 eggs without being with a male for 2 decades. In an article published on September 11th, the manager of the herpetarium noted that while this is bizarre, it's possible for snakes to store sperm in the wild for some time. What's more interesting about this story is the snake is the oldest recorded snake in a zoo in history, as well as the oldest known snake to reproduce if the eggs hatch. 2 of the eggs were taken for genetic sampling to research how they came to be, but one thing is clear. This anaconda don't want none. She's got her own buns, hun. Across the pond in Verviers, Belgium, a public works team made quite the discovery while implementing a renovation on a 137-year-old fountain. The fountain was erected as a monument to the city's first mayor, Pierre David. While dismantling the fountain, workers found a small metal casket holding Pierre David's heart, entombed near a bust of the man. The urban legend turned reality is also important in proving there has been at least one politician with a heart. Next, we'll take you to Victoria, Australia, where 10 fire crews worked diligently for 2 hours to extinguish a blaze at an artificial insemination facility. The facility housed thousands of cylinders of bull semen, which launched at the firefighters, who then had to dodge projectiles while trying to put out the flames. Thousands of dollars worth of equipment, tools, and bull semen were lost in the blaze that began around 3 a.m. on August 20th. A cause has not yet been determined and investigations are underway. In other news, Pornhub is now holding auditions for their new reality show, Bukkake Dodgeball. For more information, check out areyououtayourmindthat'snotreal.com. And to end our news segment tonight, we'll bring you back to America. In Idaho, one witch's obituary has gone viral, and I'll tell you why. The obituary reads, Holly Blair exploded into glittering bats on August 17th, 2020. She is survived by 4 spoiled cats, 2 stinky dogs, 3 bad birds, a turtle, and an utterly useless frog named Fred, as well as 3 children and a husband of little to no importance. Her remains will be interred under a tree with the ridiculous multitude of animals she rescued, both wild and domestic. Her future plans include drinking beer with Terry Pratchett and flying across the moon on her broomstick on Halloween. She has also promised to communicate with us from beyond via the cockatiel psyche. We ask that everyone carve extra jack-o'-lanterns this year in her honor. All hail the Wicked Witch of Juniper Road. That about wraps up another edition of Extra Normal News. Thanks for joining us today, and tune in next time.
Our guest tonight has experienced something that very few people in the world will ever experience. Some call it a precognitive dream, and some call it a premonition. Amber, welcome on to Beam, Screams, and Dreams.
How are you doing tonight?
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So when you reached out with this story, that was pretty much a page turn for me. I found it fascinating. Wherever you feel comfortable at starting the story, just go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. So about a couple years ago, at about 2:30 in the morning, my husband was getting ready for work, and he said he heard me start hyperventilating in my sleep. And it was so bad, it sounded like I was having a panic attack in my sleep. So he woke me up, and I shot out of bed, and I was crying, and I kept saying I needed to call my dad over and over again. And he convinced me not to, because it was like 2:30 in the morning. So I didn't. But I had a dream, and it felt like somebody was in my head showing me things. It was like I could feel it. It didn't feel like a normal dream. And there was two parts to it. And the second part was basically showing me something in my immediate future to prove to me that the dream was real. And that part consisted of, I kept seeing visions of my dad being sick and something to do with his head and possibly like a terminal illness or something similar to a terminal illness. And my dad in real life, up until I had this dream, is perfectly healthy, never has to go to the hospital. People always say he looks 20 years younger than he really is. So it's not like I was having a dream worried about him because he's sick in real life. It was nothing like that. So it was really weird to have this dream about him being sick, something with his head. And then the next part of the dream was me walking into work, and my brother looks at me, because I work with my brother and my dad, and he says, "Hey, have you talked to Dad today?" And I say, "No, have you?" And I look around at everybody else and ask them, and they all say no. And then my manager says, "We've been trying to get a hold of him. He was dropping off Chris at a doctor's appointment, and then he was going to go home, but he didn't answer our call." And then I heard like a voice in my dream say, "That's how you'll know." Like, that's how you'll know this is real, basically. And so the next morning after I woke up, I was super anxious. I was really needing to go see my dad. And so my husband told me to calm down. I'm going to go to work, and he's going to be there, and it's going to be fine. So I get into work, and the first thing that happens is my brother looks at me and says, "Hey, have you talked to Dad today?" And right when he said that, I just instantly, my stomach dropped, and I felt like I was going to throw up. And I looked around, and I asked everyone if they had talked to him, and they said no. And then my manager said, "Hey, we tried to call him, and he said he was going to go drop Chris off at his doctor's appointment and go home, but we can't get a hold of him." So I was just in a panic at that point, because it was exactly like my dream had said. So I ran and called my mom and was crying and told her that, something's wrong with Dad. I just know that there's something wrong with him. I need you to help me find him. And so I start driving to his house first, even though I knew he was at the hospital, just because that's how the dream made it seem like he was either at the hospital or he needed to go to the hospital. But I wanted to go to his house first, because if something happened to him when he was alone, then he might need help.
Sure.
So I went there first, and my grandma met me there, because my mom called her freaking out, saying, "Hey, Amber's going crazy." She thinks something happened to her dad, will you go check on her? And so I'm like looking through his windows, trying to see if he's there, ringing his doorbell. And she just keeps telling me, like, "Just go back to work. He'll probably call you back. There's no reason to think anything's wrong with him." And I just completely ignored her. And when I saw that his car wasn't there, I decided to go to the hospital. And my grandma. I told my grandma that's where I was going, and she probably thought I was losing my mind at that point. So I get in my car and I'm like racing to the hospital. And as I'm pulling into the parking lot, my mom calls me and says, okay, don't freak out, but I just got a text from your dad's phone saying that he is at the hospital. So I go in, and sure enough, he's there. And he ended up getting a bad headache that was so bad that he went to the hospital, which is not like him. He doesn't like to go to doctors. He's a baby boomer, typical strong-headed, boomer. So
Sure.
he went to the hospital, and he looked horrible. I've never seen him look like that before. And they ended up running a bunch of tests on him. And when they came back, it turned out he had a brain tumor.
Jeez.
So it was pretty much exactly like what my dream was telling me.
Had you ever had a precognitive dream like this before this experience?
No, nothing like this before. Nothing like that has happened since then. But I mean, I've had some weird things happen to me before, but I've never had a dream like that before, and where I just felt compelled to act on it, or I just knew that it was true. It was really weird. I just had zero doubt in my mind that he needed help. He was at the hospital. Something was seriously wrong with him. There's just no doubt in my mind.
Have
Based
you
on
ever?
the
Sorry to interrupt. Have you ever heard the term crisis apparition before?
No, I haven't.
So there's a lot of research into this topic where people will sometimes have what you had, which is something similar to a precognitive dream about somebody that's in imminent danger. And other things that could happen during crisis apparitions are, full manifestations of the person, even for those that are awake. And it actually isn't, I wouldn't say common, but it isn't uncommon either with these sort of things, where it's usually a close family member, a wife, a daughter, a son that experiences these crisis apparitions in times of need for the other. It's kind of fascinating, which is one of the reasons why I found your story so interesting. I'd never heard a firsthand account of one. There was more to that dream as well.
Yeah, what was happening?
So that part was basically to prove to me that the first part of the dream was true. And the first part of the dream was like a vision of the future, but not too far in the future, of like a dystopian, just dark future for the United States with a dictator as the leader. And I clearly saw who the president was, but it wasn't any politician that I recognize in real life. And I follow politics pretty closely, and I didn't recognize the person in the dream. And he was weird. He didn't seem completely human. He had super bright red eyes, and he had a huge creepy smile on his face. And he had a right-hand man with him that was human. And I don't know if it was his vice president or something, but he had another guy there with him, working with him. Just the bright red eyes is really what stuck out to me. It was almost like he could see me in my dream, and it was just soul-piercing red eyes. And it was just just a dark, just creepy future. And one of the aspects was that they were sending, he was sending people with terminal illnesses to a camp to be terminated. And I guess this was happening with sick people. And I found out after my dream that was a real thing that the Nazis did with people with terminal illnesses who are sick like that. And yeah, it was just super dark, creepy, dystopian future.
Did it feel as though this person or this entity, this tyrant, was otherworldly, or,
I kind of got the feeling that either he was being possessed by something, or he wasn't entirely human, or something like that. But the guy that was with him was definitely human, was the vibe that I got. And I saw a thing after I had my dream a while later. I saw a story about the smiling man or the grinning man. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but apparently he shows up like with the Mothman and Mothman stories. And that's like exactly what the guy looked like in my dream, was like the grinning man.
That's actually one of my favorite parts of the Mothman story. That's
interesting that you said that, because we actually discussed that specific part of the Mothman prophecies
earlier
today.
Yeah. That was the character, I believe his name was Injured Cold.
Yeah.
Who had appeared. I can't remember the exact name of the person who had spoken with him, but it appeared outside of Point Pleasant, kind of stopping the car and speaking to this man telepathically, and had the crazy smile he couldn't wipe off his face. It's absolutely chilling.
It was crazy because, and right after I had my dream, I drew a picture of the guy, and I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. And my husband and I, when we were watching The Grinning Man, he was like, that looks exactly like the picture that you drew. And it did. It looked exactly like him. It was really creepy.
Wow. If you ever find that picture, we'd love to see it. We would absolutely love to share that.
I've literally got goosebumps right now.
We did. It's incredible. We totally spoke about that today between the two of us. Not even to do with the show.
Yeah, I was like, man, I don't even know how it came up either.
I don't know.
I was like, the creepiest part to me is that Injured Cold character, you know?
Yeah.
So when you saw this in your dream, were you like present? Was this kind of like a rally, or were you seeing this politician on TV? How did that come about?
It was like I could see him in like his office. It was like I was in a room watching him. And then towards the end of the dream, he turned and looked at me, like he could see me looking at him, and it like scared me awake.
That must have been right around the time your husband had seen you kind of hyperventilating in your sleep. Have you ever had any kind of like night terrors or anything like that before this instance?
No, nothing even close to that. I've never had scary dreams that woke me up like that. Nothing like that.
And did it feel similar to how you explained your father's portion of the dream, where there was someone kind of leading you through to see that?
Yeah, it felt like someone was like there in my head showing me these things and going from one thing to the next, and it was just really weird. And then they also showed me like an aerial view of my neighborhood, and like the message that I got from that was like that this person was trying to also contact other people. I don't know if they literally meant other people in my neighborhood, but it was just clear that they were trying to talk to other people as well, not just me.
That is truly bizarre. And I know at one point you said you heard a voice in your head that said, this is how you will know. What did that voice sound like to you?
It was just like a deep voice is basically all I can describe it.
Was it scary?
No, the voice wasn't scary, no.
Almost seems like a guided dream to show you these things.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Mm-hmm.
Man, and I hope your father's doing all right as well.
Yeah, he is doing good right now. So he ended up having surgery, and it was successful, and so far nothing else has come up. So.
Well, Amber, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. It was truly incredible. I got goosebumps a couple of times during that one.
That was great.
Really something else.
Don't hesitate to send that picture if you find it. We'd love to see that.
Yeah, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, Amber. You have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
For our final guest tonight, we introduce you to Casey Hughes, paranormal investigator, here to give us a glimpse as to what might lie on the other side. Casey, welcome to Beam, Screams, and Dreams. How are you?
Hey,
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad at all.
pretty good.
Been running through a couple of great interviews tonight, and excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, when did you start your investigations into the paranormal? What brought you into the world of the paranormal?
So I started off, I was a tour guide at a really popular paranormal destination in West Virginia. I've always had a strong interest in the paranormal since I was a kid. I've definitely had experiences that I couldn't explain happen to me. And then this job called out to me. And so I was like, this is kind of my way into paranormal investigating. And ever since then, I've just like, I've developed an obsession with it and I can't stop. So.
And with some of the experiences you've had before you started paranormal investigating, had you always known that that was something that was paranormal or spirit related, or was the verification found once you became a paranormal investigator?
So my parents were actually explaining to me when I was a kid that I would say very far out there things and even use words that no 4-year-old kid should be using. And I guess that one of our older houses we lived in when I was a kid, I used the word apparition to describe something that I saw in our house. And I was telling a story about the place that I worked at, and I was telling my dad how I saw someone in my group saw a full body apparition. And he was like, you used to use that word when you were a kid all the time. You would describe things in our house as an apparition. And I have no clue how a 4-year-old would describe that. So I guess it started there. And then I feel like I'm kind of just, gaining that insight with that again, the more I investigate around here.
So how long have you been doing it since you started and doing your paranormal investigating?
So a little over a year I've been serious with investigating as far as gathering equipment and going out and investigating myself.
And do you feel more intuitive now that you've had that experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So with your investigation tools, I've watched some of your videos. I know you use infrared. Do you also use spirit boxes, anything like that to get your EVPs? I've heard a couple of EVPs you recorded, which I guess actually is technically different than using a spirit box. Can you tell us a little bit about your process and your investigatory process?
I feel like EVPs are kind of the most profound thing that you can find in paranormal investigating, because that's one thing that you can't really explain, a voice that responds to you that's not even there. And then as far as spirit box goes, I use what I call it's been coined as the Estes Method, and this was coined in Estes, Colorado at the Stanley Hotel.
That's a park.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah. So what you do is you basically put headphones or noise canceling headphones into the spirit box. And as opposed to just listening to the radio frequencies out loud with a group of people, you have someone interpreting that themselves. So they have no idea what you're asking them. And so I feel like you're getting a more genuine experience. And also you're hearing noises around you, as far as shuffling goes. So I like to keep it simple. Those two are kind of my things as far as investigating goes. And I feel like I get the most authentic experience when I use just, EVP recordings and SD session as far as spirit box.
So with the Estes sessions, when you wear the noise canceling headphones, are you writing down the things that you'll hear as they happen?
I don't write them down. I will always make sure that I'm recording so I can go back and reference to that. As far as writing it down, that's kind of a good idea. Actually, I should consider doing that.
Just out of curiosity, I wasn't sure, because there's usually more than one person involved in a session. So, you have somebody there running the box and asking questions and somebody listening on, I didn't know if the answers usually are, I'm a little bit familiar with the method, but I didn't know if the answers were normally just verbalized or written.
So whenever you're out on an investigation, do you typically, or have you done, say an outdoor and an indoor or something mixed both? Like, what do you feel has been like the most rewarding, I guess? Like what's been the most prolific experience?
I'm still experimenting with both right now. We actually filmed at Lake Shawnee back in July, and that was a whole new experiment for me because I never filmed in that kind of like, we had the whole property of Lake Shawnee to ourselves, and that was the whole property outside. I've never experienced anything like that. It was just it was very the only word I can really think of that pops in my brain right now is magical, because it just felt, there's just like a whole energy there that I couldn't even explain unless you go there. But I definitely feel like being outside is just in that sense a little stronger. You know, it's more comfortable, it's more free roaming, and then being inside, you kind of feel a little, it can make it a little scarier in a sense because you're kind of entrapped with, you know, everything going on around you.
Whatever might be there with you.
Exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah.
could you tell us a little bit about the Lake Shawnee property and a little bit of the history about that, where you did your last investigation?
In a nutshell, the first white settlers that traveled to West Virginia settled there, but what they didn't realize, or I guess even acknowledge or care at the time, was that there were Native American settlers already there on the Lake Shawnee tribe. So as they settled there, a big battle broke out between, they were the Clay family and the Shawnee Native Americans, and it ended up really bad. And the people that inherited the property after that didn't realize that there was an Indian burial ground on the property, and they built an amusement park. So, I mean, it almost sounds like a horror movie in itself. Just, you know, someone builds, you know, we've all seen Poltergeist. So,
Yeah. With that native burial ground, was that a burial ground that was previously there, or was that a direct result where the Clay family had buried the natives they had slain there? Do you know?
that was actually previously there,
Wow.
because they had real, I think that they're still, honestly, they're, from what I've talked to from the property owner, they are still investigating the, you know, remains that have been left on the property, but they speculate that there may be hundreds of remains there. So I think that this was just like the remains of the the Native Americans that had lived there before. This wasn't related to the actual battle that happened.
From your last investigation too, we got on your YouTube channel a pretty incredible clip. You mind if we go ahead and show that clip right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. Absolutely incredible.
Spooky.
Yeah. I mean, the grinning face standing there, and
The movement, just, you see it just go
I
all.
know. Yeah, it moves from one window to the next, and it's still there.
and so that you recorded that on infrared.
Yeah.
So the rest
So
of the
that wouldn't have been my reflection.
yeah, the rest of the time you guys are standing there, you aren't seeing anything. And then you only see this later when you're reviewing the infrared video.
Yeah, exactly.
You also had quite a incredible backstory on this clip. Can you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, so, and this was actually at the very end of our tour before the guy that was showing us around the property let us loose for the night. He was telling us that his brother had owned that bus, and his brother traveled with carnivals. He made license plates for people at carnivals, and he owned that bus. And I guess that wasn't the first time people have seen faces or people standing on that bus before. And he even asked me what he thought my theory was on that, because he knew I was a paranormal investigator. I was like, I really think that people, when they pass on, I think that whatever possession they kind of like, or place that they hold on to most, they're gonna stay there. Like, you know, they just have a sense of comfort, you know, when they're in between wherever they're supposed to go next after they pass away, they kind of hold on to that spot. So that could explain why he was there. Obviously, I mean, he lived in that bus, he traveled in it, so I'm sure that's where he felt at home. So, and yeah, it was just like how he's grinning at me. It just made me like think of it right away. If he traveled at carnivals, it was just, you know, he's smiling at us.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see the cheeks, you know.
Yeah.
And it almost
smile.
looks like he comes up like closer to it.
kind of.
He's like looking back out at you, like.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get my microphone working at the time too, but I actually even asked it as I was like up there. I was like, if anyone's on this bus right now, if you want to just like show yourself to me, go ahead and show yourself. And then it was at that moment when his face showed up like that. I couldn't believe it. That was honestly one of the coolest things I've caught on camera.
I would be pretty stoked about that too. But also, like, well, I guess it's good that you don't see it, or I wouldn't see it right away, because I would run. I would be out of there.
Yeah, just be a picture of the camera shaking in the opposite direction, you know?
Yeah. So we were just there, you know, we had a really cool night there. It was just, honestly, it ended up just being a great camping trip for us. You know, we're like, all right, well, we'll go over footage, but we didn't really catch anything in front of us at the time that was scary. So, and then I went through that footage and found that it blew my mind.
So do things like that, when you do go back and look at footage or recordings and you do see something, does it deter you from doing this, or does it excite you to want to do it more?
Oh, it makes me want to do it more. Absolutely. Hands down. I'm very curious. So, yeah.
So you've also worked at the Trans Allegheny.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit about that and your experiences there, and maybe one of the most memorable experiences you've had there?
It took me a while there. I feel like they kind of fill you out before they kind of start showing themselves to you paranormal like. But there was this the most profound thing that has happened to me there, and I would tell everyone this on my tours, was there is this bathroom in the children's ward of the asylum. And there's a man that people have gotten there through a spirit box, and he presents himself to be a male in his 50s, and his name is Ben. And what's kind of weird about that you think about, is that it's a man in his 50s that's in a children's ward's bathroom.
Right.
Ooh,
So,
bad
yeah.
vibe.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's bad. And a lot of the experience that happened there, like there's a bathtub you can sit in and you can see if he'll mess with you. And people have reported getting their hair touched and had their back touched.
Right.
My first night as a guide, a friend of mine was actually doing an SD session in the bathtub next to me. And they were asking how they felt about Casey, the new guide. And I felt like what it feels like when someone pulls your hair behind your ear. I felt that behind me. And the spirit box, or Valerie interpreted on the spirit box, I want her.
Oh.
And I like dropped my equipment. I stood up. I'm like, I'm done. Nope, done here. And then she goes through her EVP recorder, and as soon as she says that on the spirit box, an EVP comes through with a man whispering, I want her.
Wow.
And
So
there
you
were only
really
females. Yeah.
Go back to that room a lot then, of course, because that sounds like a great time.
Oh, yeah.
So did you actually steer away from that room after that, or, you know, with tours and stuff, did you have to bring people back into there after something?
Oh yeah, I did. I mean, that's my main story. I have to, and you know, a lot of times my girls be like, "Oh, will you sit in the tub for us again?" I'm like, I mean, I guess I have to now. But I've noticed when I tell that story in that bathroom, I get a lot of cussing and negative responses on the spirit box. Like he just kind of he doesn't like when you talk about him, or you know, notion the fact that he's maybe a pervert.
Yeah. So he kind of relies on the element of surprise there. So if it was your first time, you know, he feels like maybe he's got you in his grasp. After that, if you talk about him and you kind of know his name, he seems more angry, just kind of upset about that, huh?
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So have you found with any of your experiences thus far something that is more positive, or something that doesn't seem scary, something that's not creepy, you know, something that you would consider to be like, okay, that's just like benevolent, like
So maybe even like reaffirming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, not yet. I mean, you know, I'm pretty hopeful. I guess that I haven't been to so many locations where there's been a bunch of positive history. I will say at Lake Shawnee, and the guide was even telling us this there, it did not feel, I didn't sense any kind of like violent or negativity there. Like even like out at the swing ride, you know, or you'll see on my video, I caught that EVP of that, the hay coming through.
Wait a minute,
It just,
you're
yeah, it felt very friendly and, you know, childlike there.
hang
And
on a second, Casey. You were frozen again. Sorry.
oh, you're good. You're good. Am I good now?
Go back to where you said that that the Lake Shawnee experience wasn't like negative.
Oh no, that was honestly, that was, I slept like a baby that night. Like we both did. Josh and I both did. It was a very, I felt very it was almost like I felt protected there. It was something unreal. I know not a lot of people could say that about spending the night on a haunted amusement park alone, but it was a very comfortable and safe place, I felt at the time. And I wasn't expecting that when we were there. We were actually kind of nervous driving down because when we got there, the guy told us, he's like, you guys have the whole property to yourselves. And we're like, oh boy, hopefully we last. But no.
So there's been a kind of a trend, and it's even a little bit of an ongoing joke in the paranormal community, that the folks that have like ghost hunter shows right now are kind of rude a little bit to these ghosts when they go into places.
Yeah.
They seem like they're kind of yelling at them like, hey, show yourself, you know. And that's kind of almost like become a little bit of an ongoing joke in the paranormal community. How do you approach it differently? And do you think that your intent when you do an investigation makes a lot of the difference?
I always try to leave offerings as far as like tobacco and alcohol go. Like I try to leave offerings. I try to, because the thing is, you're in their domain. It's like when you go swimming in the ocean with sharks and you get mad because you got bit by a shark. It's like, you know, you're in their territory. You know what you signed up for. You know what you're in for. I mean, you can't really be mad when you provoke someone and then you get scratched or something. And yeah. I've noticed, it may not be the same kind of activity. I know some people just want to go out there and get scratched and get hit so they can just show it off. But I'm in here for research purposes, and I want to learn so I can even possibly help these spirits with, if they need help with something. So I try to go in, you know, in a very respectable way and just ask them what they need and, you know, what I can do to help possibly, and just gain information, because it's research. It really is. And I know that everyone has their different methods, but my method is going in there a little warmer, a little nicer, and, you know, leaving offerings.
I'm glad we have you out there. You know, we can't be having these guys give all humans and the living a bad reputation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It was something like that. You know, I think putting your best foot forward is probably the right approach. You know, I've seen several investigations of places, even like the Sally House, for instance, where you know, there've been a lot of people that go in there and they have an okay time. You know, and other people that will go in there and will have giant scratch marks on their back after a night of screaming and provoking. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Sally House is a great example of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of being able to put your best foot forward, especially when you're stepping into something that you really don't know, probably, and you know what that entity's intention is. Probably putting your best foot forward is the way to go.
Sure,
exactly.
Yeah, I would agree, because I do think that, as some of our other guests have mentioned, the world's moving towards a place of like finding more of that positive aspect in people. And so if we're, you know, looking at our past people as well and not really acknowledging time, then we probably should be giving them our best too. Yeah. And acknowledging them with like love and care that we would with any living being. And
exactly.
Maybe, do you think that that's maybe why we don't find a lot of positive ghost experiences? Because they are just ascended, essentially?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I don't know. I think that we're going to get more solid answers that are going to be more profound to us over time if we put more positivity into it instead of just, you know, just going out and yelling like, come get me and all this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what they all do. I don't know. It's a different approach, and I'm willing to keep trying that. You have to be patient with it though. You know what I mean? You can't just go out there and expect something to happen right away. That's part of the research too.
So
Yeah.
what do you have on the radar for the future with your paranormal investigations, and where would you like to see?
I try to go to as many places as I can that, you know, permit you to go on properties, but obviously that's not always the case. I've had Waverly Hills.
Was that Waverly Manor?
Yeah. I've had that place on my radar. I've been trying to look up newer places that people haven't researched that much. There is a battlefield not too far away from where I grew up in West Virginia called Droop Battlefield. And there have actually been Bigfoot sightings there. And I just haven't seen any videos really of people investigating there. So I want to try that place out too.
That's pretty interesting too. So is that a Civil War battlefield?
Yep.
And that makes you ask the question too, you know, is that just a weird nexus if there's Bigfoot sightings and a couple of paranormal experiences happening there? What is the energy of that place, you know?
What's your YouTube channel called?
Hexia. It's Hexya.
That's Hexia on YouTube. And Casey, thank you so much for coming to talk with us tonight and sharing your clips. We hope to see a lot more in the future. And
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and once again,
Well,
thanks for being on Beam Screams and Dreams. Thank you to all the guests that appeared on our show tonight. Your boldness and willingness to share your stories and experiences speak extraordinarily to the content of your character. And thank you to the viewers and listeners for tuning in to another episode of Beam Screams and Dreams. You can reach out and share your story with us through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or email, or just to keep in touch with updates about episode releases and merch coming out. We leave you again tonight with a quote by Swiss chemist Dr. Albert Hoffman. What one commonly takes as the reality, including the reality of one's own individual person, by no means signifies something fixed, but rather something that is ambiguous. That there is not only one, but that there are many realities, each comprising also a different consciousness of the ego. Thank you for tuning in to Beam Screams and Dreams. Until next time.